Hello everyone. Welcome back to Gmat Friday with IMS International. I am Durga Sircar, your verbal mentor, and like every Friday, today we are going to solve a question together. The question that we are going to solve is a reading comprehension of business and commerce category, and it is ranked at 705 plus level. Now let's see whether it is the passage or the questions that make it a hard level passage to solve. Now what do you have to do? You have to strategically pause the video here so that you are able to read the comprehension, and then you have to solve the three questions which are given with the comprehension one by one and resume back to have a look at the solution. Okay guys, now let's have a look at what the passage is trying to say before we move on to the questions. The author says lower material costs can lead to increased profitability. So if we lower the cost of the material, this will definitely lead to profitability. This potential, however, so whenever we see the word however, whenever there is a contrasting word, we know that the author is trying to develop his argument. This, however, does not guarantee that lowered costs will actually improve the bottom line. So it's not necessary that lowering the cost will always lead to profitability in the long run. The emphasis on securing low cost materials must be measured against other priorities such as consumer satisfaction and long-term profitability. So, when we are trying to lower the cost of our materials, we should also be careful of other parameters like how is it affecting our consumer satisfaction and long-term profitability. In cases where a company's material costs are already in line with those of its competitors, lowering material costs can lead to unforeseen problems in the long run. So the author says that when the material costs are already competitive with that of our competitors, lowering the cost further can lead to problems in the long run. Low cost materials may translate into problems further down the supply chain, particularly at a point where the end consumer interacts with the product. So there can be problems like problems in the supply chain or at a point when the consumer is actually interacting with the product. So all in all, the author is trying to develop his argument that when we try to lower the material costs, instead of actually improving or increasing the profitability, lowering the material costs might actually lead to some kind of losses, or it might lead to a negative effect in the long run. Now let's see what the author is trying to say in the next paragraph. A local bicycle manufacturer failed to see these long-term implications of seeking lower costs. So now in the second paragraph, what is the author trying to do? He is trying to strengthen his point by giving an example. Here we see the example of a local bicycle manufacturer who failed to see the long-term implications of lowering the costs. As a result, it experienced a decrease in consumer satisfaction and a long-term decline in orders. So, there was a decrease in consumer satisfaction and there was a decline in order. So, lowering the material costs actually led to what? Decreased consumer satisfaction. So, lower consumer satisfaction and his orders also declined. Okay. The executives of the bicycle factory didn't realize the degree to which the low-cost gear components were less user-friendly than the components they had previously been using. Also, these low-cost components were not that user-friendly. So, that is again a negative aspect of lowering the manufacturing costs or trying to lower the material costs. Furthermore, the company didn't realize the degree to which these low-cost bicycle components would increase product returns. So the people, they actually started returning the products. They were not happy with the end product. And it cost the company its hard-earned market share. So, the people began to return products, which led to a drop in the market share of the company. Ultimately, the only benefit of their new sourcing strategy was that it increased short-term profitability. So, reducing the material costs did not lead to gains in the long run. It only increased profitability for a short amount of time. So, this was a very short-sighted decision on part of the bicycle manufacturer, thus proving his point that lowering the material cost does not guarantee that it will increase profitability in the long run. And that is the main idea of the author. So that is what this passage is trying to tell us. Okay guys, now let's have a look at the questions and try to solve them one by one. The first question says the primary purpose of the passage. Now we know the primary purpose of the passage is the crux of the passage, or we can say more than 75% content of what the passage is trying to say. So let's go back to the passage for a while and try to remember that the passage is talking about how lowering the material costs might not be beneficial in the long run. It might give us some short-term profitability, but the author is never favoring lowering the material cost because it will not lead to long-term profitability. So going back to the options, what does option A say? Contrast two potential outcomes of a type of a business strategy. The author talks about implementing the strategy of lowering the costs, but he does not talk about any two outcomes. So we can rule out A. Demonstrate that higher costs are always better than lower costs. The author was actually talking about lowering the material costs, but he never said that keeping the costs higher would be beneficial. So we can eliminate B. Recommend a deeper analysis of a type of business investment. Okay. Now here the author is trying to tell us how we should analyze or how we should have a more detailed look when we are trying to decide whether we should lower the material costs or not. So yes, the author is recommending that we have a look at our idea or our plan more in detail. So we can hold on to C. D says explain how to manage costs further down the supply chain. I don't think so. We talked about supply chain anywhere in the passage. Eliminate D. And finally, E says criticize executives who fail to see long-term opportunities. We never talked about, or the author never talked about criticizing anybody. Criticizing is too extreme. So we can easily rule out E and safely mark C as the correct choice. So for the first question guys, C is the correct answer. Now let's have a look at question number 2. According to the passage, an emphasis on low material costs is comparable to an emphasis on product returns in terms of the. Okay. So what is the relationship between low material costs and product returns? That is what the question is asking us. So let's go back to the passage and rewind on what we read in the second paragraph. In the second paragraph, we had read that when the executives of the bicycle factory didn't realize the degree to which low-cost gear components were less user-friendly. So, when the material costs were lower, what happened? The people started to increase the product returns. So, the people, they were returning the products and this led to a decrease in the market share. So what was the relationship between low market costs and product returns? The lower they went with their market costs, the people were returning the products even more. So both of them had what? Both of them had a directly proportional relationship. So the relationship between the two was what? It was directly proportional. So Direct relationship between the two. A should work here. But let's have a look at the other options. B says superior importance of low material costs. Now, our author is never in favor of decreasing the material costs, and it has led to an increase in product returns. So, we can safely eliminate B. C says long-term planning that can cause problems further down the supply chain. Yes, the author talks about long-term planning, but long-term planning can be done to avoid the problems, not further down. Or long-term planning will not cause the problems. So this is opposite to what the passage is saying. D says market share they are likely to command. Market share is going to decrease because when we lower the material cost, product returns increase. So market share is going to decrease. Market share is not going to be commanded. It is not going to increase. And long-term analysis, they both require, they do require long-term analysis, but that is not the relationship between the two. So the relationship is directly proportional and A is the correct choice. So for question number 2, we can safely mark A as the correct choice. Now moving towards the third question. What does the question say? The passage suggests which of the following about the product quality provided by the local bicycle manufacturer prior to changing its material costs. Okay. Now let's go back to the second paragraph where we might find an answer to this question. This is an inference question and we have to infer what did the author say about the quality of the product before changing the material cost by the bicycle manufacturer. So the bicycle manufacturer failed to see the long-term implications. What happened? There was a decrease in the customer satisfaction, and what also happened that he did not realize that the low-cost gear components were less user-friendly. That means the manufacturer began to use less user-friendly, low-cost components. So let's have a look at the options. A says it was at least on par with that of its competitors. Means before switching to the lower cost material, the manufacturer was providing the material which was at par with its competitors. Yes, this is an inference that we can draw. Let's hold on to A. B says its materials were the only reason for its strong market share. We cannot say whether the materials were the only reason. Only is something which is a too extreme option, and we never know whether the market share was strong. We only know that after the change, the market share began to decrease. But we don't know whether initially the market share was strong or not. So we cannot infer B. C says its materials were of lower quality than those of its competitors. I am not sure that the passage anywhere states that the materials being used were of lower quality initially. No. The industry was making a shift. We know that the bicycle manufacturer was making a shift. We do not know about the industry. So we cannot generalize from what is given in the passage, and that is why we can eliminate D. E says it needed to be improved because its competitors were gaining market share. We know that the market share of the bicycle manufacturer was decreasing, but we do not know that the market share of the competitors were increasing. So we cannot infer E. We can only infer A, and thus for the third question, A is the correct choice. So a big congratulations to everybody who have marked the correct choice. That's it for today's video. I hope you like the passage that we solved. For more such videos, more such content, do like our videos and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you again next Friday with another Gmat Friday video. Till then, keep practicing and ace the Gmat.